I just built this n8n auto-publishing system that takes any video and publish it to all 9 of these social media platforms every day or even every hour, and I'm sharing it to those who need it. Because in the previous lesson, we just showed how to create these POV videos that are getting tens of millions of views automatically through AI and no code. So now we will take those videos that we created and publish it to every social channel imaginable to increase your reach. I'll also teach how to use this great AI tool that is the only one in the market that I know that integrates to these 9 social media channels so easily. And no, you don't have to pay $149 a month or $299 like in other platforms, because Bluetato, the tool we'll use, has a generous free trial that you can try out to see if it's for you. And if you stick to the end, I'll also share how you can get an exclusive code that will let you save on costs. So what you can do is set up this workflow once and let it do the rest of the work for you when it comes to publishing posts as you watch your followers grow. Because how it works is that you just provide it your videos through this Google Sheet template. It grabs those videos from that Google Sheet, sets up your configuration in Bluetato so that it can post to all of your social media channels simultaneously. And you can see with that one run of our automation, we were able to post on TikTok, on YouTube, in Instagram, in Facebook, on Twitter, and even on LinkedIn, Threads, and it even allows you to post images on Pinterest and Blue Sky. And what's great is, since we're using no-code tools, anyone can do it, even if you're a complete beginner. All you literally need to know is just how to drag and drop things, and you're set. And learning about AI automation is also one of the best uses of your time, given the demand for it, which you can clearly see if you just type it in Google Trends. So invest the next few minutes or so learning about automation today, and stick around until the end because this might just be one of the most crucial skills that you will ever learn. By the way, if you're new here, my name is Jay, and it is my one mission to make AI and automation easy to learn for anyone who wants to, especially if you want to make a living from this wave. In fact, to make this as easy as possible, I have collated all of the resources and prompts you need for this lesson in this page in our community, with a specific call out for this blueprint file, which you can download and import to the tool that we are using, and it will create that automation for you without having to lift a finger. And if in case you're not yet part of the community, check that out in the link in the video description. We have tons of lessons here around artificial intelligence and automation, all with the resources and prompts and blueprints you need to get started. And we also have a growing community of AI professionals here who are doing a lot of cool stuff, and there's a lot of knowledge sharing within the group. So if you're looking for a network of people interested in this space as well, then this community might just be for you. So if you want access to step-by-step tutorials, ready to load automation blueprints that you can just import into the no-code tools that we'll be using, and a network of AI professionals, then check out the RoboNuggets community just in the link below. Okay, let's dig into this. So the framework of what we'll set up is actually very simple and already illustrated by the workflow that we'll be doing. You'll basically have the input section, which captures the videos that you're planning to publish. You have the config section, which sets up Bluetato's access to your social accounts. And finally, the output, which is your end in mind, which is to have your videos or posts be published to the channels of your choice. And the tool that we'll be setting up for this workflow is called n8n, which if you just go to our community and click here, that will take you to n8n's page that will allow you to get a free trial. And if in case you're not familiar yet with n8n, it's basically a no-code automation tool similar to Zapier or Make.com if you've heard of those tools before. But you can see if you just type it in Google Trends, it has experienced quite a surge in popularity and demand recently, just because of how easy it is to set up workflows with this tool. So it's probably a good time to learn it and to invest some of your time to mastering this new no-code tool. So once you've signed up to n8n, just click on Create Workflow to start here at the top right. And if you double click this top left side, you can just name it with whatever that you want. And for the first step, you need to set up a trigger. And basically a trigger in n8n is what triggers the whole workflow. And for us, we can just set it as this schedule trigger option. And if you click that, there's some scheduling options here, which is self-descriptive, but we'll leave that for now, which basically says for it to be triggered once a day at midnight. So click away, and then if you click on plus, you can set up your next node, which would be your Google Sheet node. And within Google Sheet, the action that you want to get is this get rows in sheet action. And here you can see basically n8n's node configuration page, which if you're new to n8n is probably worth stepping back just to give you an overview of how it works. And it's pretty simple because it actually follows a pretty similar design of working, which is the same one that we use in our framework. So for every node, it will always have an input, which are basically values or attributes or even files sometimes that it gets from a previous node. You have the configuration of that node itself, and this one varies a bit for each module. And you have the output, which is a window that shows using that input, and with this configuration of the node, this is the output that it is now passing on to the next node. And if you go back to our Google Sheets node, it pretty much has the same design of working. And for each node, if it's an external application, there's just a step to connect your credentials to it. Thankfully, with Google Sheets, it's quite easy because if you just click on Create New Credential, n8n actually has a Sign In with Google button here, which if you just follow through, then that should connect to your Google Sheets quite easily. And for the rest of these attributes, you of course would need a Google Sheet to connect it to. So you can devise your own template for this one. But if you're part of the community and you just click this, it will take you to a template which is the same as the previous lessons. So if you want to understand all those columns, you can just go and watch that video here on my channel. But for our use case, this is just a good template to use to learn this automation, because what's important here would be the videos that you want to publish, which is cleanly listed in this column. So once you copy that into your Google Drive or create a template for yourself, you can just search for that document here. For my case, it would be this one, and just choose the tab within that Google Sheet. In my case, it would be Sheet 1. And then you want to add a filter, which is looking for this column in particular called Publishing, and set that to for Publishing. And what that will basically do, if we go back to our Google Sheet, is it will take the first row in our sheet that has this column called Publishing set as this value for Publishing. And that's just useful because then if you change these manually to skip, then you'll be able to skip that video and not post it to your channel. And then the final step that you just want to add here is under Options, add in Return Only First Matching Row and toggle that on. And then just click on Test Step. And you can see here in the output that it got this first ID, which is the Cleopatra video, and more importantly, this final output column, which shows the MP4 file that we'll be publishing to our social media channels. And just to point out where that is basically this row right here from our Google Sheet template. So with that done, just click away. So that is the input section now done. So next we'll set up the config areas. And the tool that we'll be using is called Blotato. And Blotato is fairly new, so not a lot of people know about it yet. But Blotato is really useful because number one, it has the most social channels you can connect to that I've ever seen. It has 9. And later you'll see how easy it is to connect to those channels as well. And the person behind Blotato is actually Sabrina Ramonov, whom if you don't know her, basically she's one of the best AI educators out there on TikTok and on Instagram. And that's just good to mention because then you know that it's created by someone who has experience in this social media field already. And Sabrina has also provided a discount code, which you can use after your free trial. So stick to the end if you want to know how to get that. So yeah, Blotato is fairly new, so there's not a lot of tutorials yet on how to use it. But in the next few minutes, we will make it as easy as possible to set it up. Now the next step is for us to set up our Blotato configuration, which will be just 2 nodes. And the first one will be an edit fields node, so you can just search for that. And what we can just do is rename this to set Blotato IDs, just to be clear on what it does, and change the mode to JSON. We basically have a window here to put in a JSON configuration. And if you look at our final end in my automation here, it's this node right here, which if I open, the JSON within that is actually showing those 9 social media channels and these string of numbers, which correspond to my account IDs. So what this will basically tell Blotato to do is if you want to post to Instagram, it will post to this specific account, which corresponds to my channel. If we want to post to TikTok, it will post it using this TikTok account ID, which corresponds again to my specific TikTok channel. So if you go back to our community and scroll down, you can actually find this template already, which you can just copy and put into that field, and it will already have that template, which you can just paste into this section. So if you click on test step, what that basically outputs is it provides n8n with specific numerical values for each of your channels, which would correspond to your account IDs. Now, obviously, the big question is, how do you get these numbers in the first place? And for us to do that, we'll just need to head to blotato.com with a link to sign up just in the video description as well. And once you've logged in, what you want to do is go to your settings over here. And if you scroll down, you can see that there's an option here to log into your individual social accounts quite easily. And this is what's great about Blotato, because it's actually so easy to log into each of your social media channels. If I click log in with Instagram, for example, it just redirects you to a single sign-on page. Once you've logged in, you'll be able to set up your account that easily, which is much easier because in other tools, you actually have to get through a lot of hoops just to connect your account to their platform, like getting a client ID or client secret, which is not that simple, especially for beginners. So at least with Blotato, I tried with all of them and it was a breeze to connect through each one of them. And once you connect it to your channels, and again, you don't have to do all 9, you can do only the ones that are relevant to you if you need it to, and this automation will still work. You now have this option to copy your account ID, which if we go back to our set Blotato ID node, that's basically what you need to port over. So for Instagram, just copy this in and place that there. For YouTube, just copy that in, place that there. And then we'll just be doing this for each one of your social platforms. So once you copy those in, then Blotato now knows which account to post. But just 2 specific callouts here. You might notice that Facebook has a specific Facebook page ID attribute here. And that's important because apart from linking to your account, it's also linked to your Facebook page. And in Blotato, what's great is that Facebook page, which mine is called Test Brand, is already included here. So I just copy that page ID and I place it here. And now my Facebook is all set up. Now for Pinterest, it's the same thing. You have an account ID here, but you would also need a board ID, which currently the platform doesn't show that from this window. So I'll come back to this once we get to Pinterest, if in case it's something that you want to set up. But for now, you now have your account IDs all set up there. And if you click on test step, n8n has now captured those values as dynamic attributes, which you can pass on to the succeeding nodes. Now, the last step in our config for Blotato's access is done via this HTTP request node, and we can name that to Ready Video in Blotato. And make sure to rename this because it will just make your life easier, not just by remembering what the node is about, but also for passing dynamic values, since n8n works from this title to understand where to get its inputs from. But for here, just set this method to post because we'll be posting a request to Blotato. And under this URL, we'll just paste their Blotato's URL, which if you go back to the community, I've pasted the link there, which you can just copy and paste here. And what you would want to do is toggle the send headers as on, and under the name, just type in Blotato API key. And it's important to make sure it's typed in exactly with the hyphens and with the capitalizations properly formatted. And you can just copy it from the community just to make sure it's correct. For the value there, we'll get back to that in a bit. But the last thing to set up here is you want to toggle send body as on, and we want to keep the body content type as JSON. And for this one, set it as URL. And for the value, what you would want to pass on to this node is this final output coming from our Google Sheets. So if you just drag that across, you can see that it's coming from our Google Sheets, specifically that URL which contains our MP4 file. So this is now all set up, but before we hit test step, we of course need to provide the API key here for Blotato to accept our request. And if you go back to Blotato settings, then you'll be able to scroll down here and under API access, just copy your API key and paste it here. So an API key is like your password, so don't share this around with everyone. For me, for example, I'll be resetting this after this tutorial. But with that done, you can now click test step. And what that basically did is upload your video file that you want to post into Blotato's servers, which is why it provided you with an output of a URL. And what's important to check is to see if it properly got uploaded. And you can check that just by copying this URL and opening an incognito window by typing in Ctrl-Shift-N or under here at the top right. And if you paste the URL here, you should be able to watch your video that you want to post. And that's just a good sense check, because if it opens in an incognito window, then that means that this file is free to be used by our succeeding nodes, which is important because if it's restricted or if the file is missing, then there's nothing to pass through to the next nodes. So that is the config section now done. So now to the exciting part of setting up these social media channels and the actual publishing to each of them. Now this may look intimidating because there's 9 of these, But the good news is once you set up one node here, you can pretty much just copy paste it to create the other social media channels. And again, if you don't need Blue Sky or Pinterest, for example, you don't need to set them up and you'll still be able to run this workflow smoothly. And to start with, let's set up Instagram. What you can just do is select this node that you've already set up and just copy it, Control C, and hit Control V, and then drag this plus icon over to that node. And that's useful because a lot of the specs within this HTTP request node will be keeping. So if you double click that, just rename that to Instagram so that you know exactly what's inside here. And the good news is everything here remains the same. The only change that you need to make under the body section, under specify body, change it to using JSON. And you can see it's going to wait for a JSON configuration here. And if you go back to our community, there's a nice clean JSON file that you can just copy or type in if you want to and put that within this field. But before doing so, just make sure to toggle to expression so that the formatting remains and copy that in. So now if you just expand that, you can see it's a pretty simple request where we're asking Bluetato to target our Instagram social account to post there. And the content that we want the platform to post is this text, which is the caption, in this platform, which is Instagram, and this media URL, which is our video in this case. And in which account is basically provided in this account ID. And you can see those are green text because they're dynamic values. So if you look at the result, this is actually what n8n will be passing on to Bluetato. So this text here is coming from our Google Sheets under the caption column, which in n8n is available here, and in Google Sheets is available in this column, just to recap. And under media URL, you can see this is the familiar URL that we got from the previous node when we uploaded our video to Bluetato. And then this account ID is our Instagram account ID that we set up in the preceding node as well. So now you have a nice clean post request to send to Bluetato to post that to your account. And this is also why the names are important, because you can see this expression in particular points to the set Bluetato IDs node. So if, for example, you didn't rename that, you can see that the link is broken, but that's okay. You can either rename that node or just delete this and go ahead and drag the relevant ID, in which case Instagram, within that double quotes, and you'll be able to set it up again. So that is perfect. So now this is all set up. So if you just click on test step, you can see that there is an error here, which if you unpack it, it says a status code of 400, which basically means that it has to do with our inputs. So upon checking it, I realized that this URL needs to be changed from media to posts. And if you need that exactly, I just put that in our community here. So just copy that in and just paste that URL there. And now if I click on test step, a successful result will give you this post submission ID. And if we go back to Bluetato, under published posts, you can see that this post was created just a minute ago. And you can see in my test Instagram, it was posted successfully, which is great. Now, before we proceed further, if in case you're getting this post submission ID, but you find that your video is not publishing, a good way to troubleshoot is just head to this remix tab within the Bluetato platform and try posting your video here manually through this add post function. It will actually give you the error within your video, because with all these social media channels, remember that they have some specs of, let's say, video resolutions that they accept. In TikTok, for example, you can't really post a video that is small in size, like less than 300 pixels in height or width. So when I was first trying this out, I was able to validate that through this remix area, and it told me that the video format is unsupported by TikTok. But if in case you're still having trouble, I've also included in the community the link to their API documentation and this support channel so that you can get support with your questions on this specific platform. Because remember, Bluetato is fairly new, and the pro of that is you get in on it early before everyone else. But obviously, because they're still building out the platform and their API feature is relatively new, the error codes that get passed on to you back as the user to troubleshoot may not yet still be fully set up. So just keep that in mind. But anyway, that is a success that we now have set up Instagram properly. Because then what you can do is just copy that again, Control C, and hit Control V, and then link this once again to that new node. And then we can set up our next one, which is YouTube. So just name that as such. And everything here actually stays the same apart from this JSON config. So if you go back to our community, just copy this in and paste it there. If you expand that just by clicking on this lower right button, you can see that it's practically the same thing. So you're asking Blotato to target YouTube, and under the content, we provided this specific video on which YouTube channel is basically this account ID that we've already set up in the past. The only extra things that you can see here are stuff like privacy status. Currently, I've set it as unlisted, but if you change that to public, then it will automatically make your video public for every publishing. And you can check the final JSON that will be posted to Blotato here at the right. So now if we click on test step, you can see that I got a post submission ID once again. If we return to Blotato's published posts, there's now a new YouTube line there, which if you click on that, you can see it published in my test account here. So now YouTube is already done. By the way, a reminder to make sure you always click on save, just so that your workflow is saved as you create it. Now to set up TikTok, let's just copy that latest node that we created and paste it there, connect it once again. And if you double click on that, you can just change this to TikTok, rename. And again, everything here remains the same, except for this JSON area, which if you go back to our community under TikTok, you can just copy that in and paste it here. And if you expand that, again, it's the same format, but now you have these specific attributes to TikTok, which you can just explore on your own. The call out that I wanted to mention is you have this field is AI generated, which is set as true. But if in case the video that you're going to post is actually not AI generated, you can just change that to false and that would work as expected. But for our case, since these are for the POV faceless videos, we can have that set as true. So if you click away, click on test step, again, you get a post submission ID. You go back to your published post in Blotato and you can see that TikTok was posted right here, which was properly posted in our TikTok channel. So there you can see where we're going with this. It's pretty much the same pattern for the rest of the platforms. So I'll just illustrate them one by one, but feel free to skip ahead if in case the remaining platforms are not as relevant to you. But just to finish up our Facebook one, you can just copy that and link that to that node. And if I double click, I now change that to Facebook. And under the community, you have this easy to copy paste config for Facebook. And just paste it here, do a quick inspection, and you can see it's getting your page ID, getting the caption and the media URL, so that's looking good. So if I click on test step, it's now provided my post submission ID again. You can confirm it posted to this Facebook test page that I've set up, and when I click that, you can confirm that it has been published. Now the next one is threads, so just copy that in, link it to the previous node, double click that and rename it accordingly. Everything remains the same. Copy the config over at our community, paste that here, do a quick double check that it is resulting correctly. Click again on test step, get the post submission ID, refresh your published posts. That one took some time, but it's now posted here, which is now posted over at Threads. The next one is now Twitter. So just copy that over and link it properly to the originating node and just rename that accordingly. Copy the JSON over at our community, paste it here, do a quick check and click on test step. That succeeded. And you can see it posted at our Twitter profile here. Now there's just last 3 social channels remaining. So if you just copy that, link that again to the original node. This one would be for LinkedIn, so rename that accordingly. Just copy the configuration in our community and paste that here. Do a quick check. You can see this one is now posting to LinkedIn. Click on test step. You can see in our published post that's been posted. And if I click that, you can see it's now posted to our LinkedIn profile here as well. Second to the last one would be Blue Sky. So just copy that in, make sure that's connected and rename that to Blue Sky. Again, copy this in from our community, paste that over. And if you look at this, what's unique about Blue Sky is that it actually doesn't accept video files at the moment. It only accepts images and text. So if I click on test step here, even if it gives me a publish ID, which it just did, it's actually not going to post that because of this specific platform's rules at the moment. So this is where Blotato's API docs is useful, which I also link in our community. So to illustrate this, I'll actually just use an image for now, which in our Google Sheets template, I just added here for illustration. And if I open that image, it basically has the RoboNuggets icon in there. So now when I rerun that workflow, you can see I was able to upload that image in Blue, which is given in this URL. And if I look at the blue sky expression, the media URL it's pointing to is now that specific image. And it gave me a post submission ID here. And you can see that content posted now in blue sky. So now for the last one would be Pinterest. So just copy that in and connect that there. And if I double click this and rename it as Pinterest, you can just copy the JSON from our community for Pinterest and paste that there. And if you open this, you can see it's pretty simple except for the board ID, which we would need to get. And unfortunately in Pinterest, they don't provide you the board ID that easily because it's a back-end ID that they don't publish for users generally. But there is a workaround. So if you go to your board, do a right click and click on Inspect, just head to Network. And then if you reload the Pinterest tab, just type in under Filter, Boards Resource. And for the one that appears, just go ahead and click that. Just expand this a bit. And for that whole response, just go ahead and click Control A to copy that whole thing, and then Control C to copy it. And with that copied, what you want to do is to go to gemini.google.com, paste that in, and if you scroll back to the top, give it a prompt like this one, which again you can find just in our community if you just want to copy that in. And now if I submit this, Google Gemini will give you the board ID. And by the way, the reason why we do this in Gemini and not ChatGPT is because their context window is actually much longer, at least for the free version. So that is generally more available for users. So now with that board ID, just go ahead and copy that in. And what you want to do is to include it in your SetBlotato ID node. So if you just double click that, just drop that into this Pinterest board ID section. Make sure there are no trailing spaces. And now you just need to rerun this automation for you to test that out. And if in case you don't want to publish again to these other channels, what you can just do is to do a right click on them and click on deactivate, and it will skip those nodes. To do that for multiple nodes, just hold Shift and highlight all of the nodes that you want to turn off, and then do a right click and click on deactivate. And now only Pinterest remains. And if we test that and open Pinterest, you can see in our post expression that we were able to pass on the board ID. We were able to pass on the other relevant parts here, and we got a post submission ID, which if we go back to our published posts in Blotato, there is now a link here, which if we click, we can confirm that our image has now been published. And by the way, in Pinterest, at least from my testing, videos don't seem to be accepted as well. So just take note of that, that images are the only ones that Pinterest accepts at the moment for this automation. And there you go. You now have these 9 social platforms fully set up. And now the last thing that you need to do is in our Google Sheets tracker, once you have posted this specific row and image or video, you of course would want to set this status from for publishing into done. Because if you don't do that, the automation will just continuously get this row ad infinitum. But of course, you don't want to do that manually. You want the automation to do that for you. So what you want to do is to extend this originating node again and add a new node there, again for Google Sheets. But this time we will be updating a row in that sheet. And your credentials here are all set up. So just reselect the template that you were working with. For me, it's this one. Select the sheet. Now it is fetching the columns. And here it's basically asking which row should I update? And the answer to that is we'll ask n8n to find the ID of the row that we were working with. So you can just drag that from under Google Sheets into here. And you can see we're working on row 9 at the moment. And you basically want n8n to update this column called publishing to done. So now if you click on test step, it succeeded. And you can see that that was changed automatically by the workflow. So now if you just organize this a bit, and again, if you activate this by holding on Shift, doing a right click, and activating all of them, you now have your workflow fully set up. That if you just click on test, you can see it will get the video from your Google Sheet. It will set up your configuration in Blotato and also upload the video there. And then it is now posting it to 9 social platforms simultaneously, and finally updating Google Sheets so that that row is done. And if you go back to our published post, you can see that video was simultaneously posted to our different social media platforms just a few seconds ago. And there you have it. You are now able to complete the output section of that automation, and you now have that workflow that can get any video published to 9 social media channels simultaneously, all using one platform. So there you go. If you like this lesson, do give a like or subscribe. It helps us a lot so that I can continue making tutorials like this one. And if you're interested about anything to do with artificial intelligence and automation, do check out the RoboNuggets community. The link to that is just in the video description. And as a bonus for joining the community, you will also get access to an exclusive discount code in Blotato that will give you 30% off for life. And there's also a lot more lessons in our community that are all centered around AI, automation, and just basically getting ahead. And within each of these lessons, we do have all the resources and toolkits available to make it as easy as possible to learn all these new knowledge. So not only do we have a good community of AI professionals, you'll have access also to step-by-step tutorials, and you also will get these automation blueprints that are basically plug and play. So check out that link just in the video description. That's it for now. See you guys next time. Thank you.